And I'm sure most of the guys that grew up in the 80s or the 90s know that Barry White had a very deep and smoothing voice. And playing Barry White would get you laid. Welcome to Vigorous PEDs. I'm Coach Steve, and I'm getting tired of talking about the Trenbolone sandwich. But hey, the show must go on, and we still got 3 videos left in the Trenbolone profile video series. So in this video, we'll discuss the rest of the side effects, even though I already made 3 videos about the common side effects with Trenbolone. And is it me, or is Trenbolone the most memed anabolic androgenic steroids out there? I mean, we have Tren cough, Tren rage, Tren somnia, and maybe in this video we can coin another few Trenbolone terms. So we'll discuss the rest of the side effects in this video, which are mostly related to its potent androgenic rating. And then I'll make another video about how Trenbolone affects your blood work regarding the complete blood count, the kidney values, the liver values, and your lipid values. And in the last video, once we get all the disclaimers out of the way and things you should know before you consider Trenbolone, is the dosing protocols and how Trenbolone can be combined with other performance-enhancing drugs. And then you basically have everything you need to know before you decide to turn yourself into a Belgian blue and use Trenbolone to, turn into a 200-pound raging bull. So let's start with the night sweats first, but we can also label it as Tren sweats, because these night sweats are not as common with other anabolic androgenic steroids, even though they might occur during the off season, but that's also compounded with caloric intake and a heavier body weight and overall increased metabolism because food intake is so high. But Trenbolone, it's such a potent nutrient partitioning agent that even when you're in a caloric deficit, it's in most cases when Trenbolone is taken, hopefully after 10% body fat, when you don't have to take so much Trenbolone to facilitate the anabolism and the changes in cosmetic appearance. That's just a little heads up on the dosing protocols. I advise most of my clients to take Trenbolone after 10% body fat. Now, in those cases, during a cutting phase, of course, caloric intake is going to be restricted or severely restricted to get down to a lower body fat percentage. And carbohydrates are usually spaced around the workout, right? So if you train in the evening and these carbohydrates are still in your bloodstream, Tren sweats are going to be more severe compared to training in the morning, which I recommended in the Tren Rage video. If you're taking Tren in the morning to prevent Tren somnia, and you train in the morning to deal with your Tren Rage, which, might occur within an hour post-administration, and you have your carbohydrates before and after the workout, meaning these carbohydrates are mostly metabolized and absorbed or stored as glycogen by the time you go to sleep, Tren sweats will still be there, but they won't be as severe as when you train in the evening and you have your carbohydrates before bedtime or around bedtime, when you train in the evening. So that's another way around it. Early morning Trenbolone administration. You have your carbohydrates, you do your workout to take care of your Tren rage. You have more carbohydrates post-workout to restore glycogen levels and start the anabolic process. And then in the evening, your Tren sweats won't be as severe. Now again, because Trenbolone is such a potent androgen, and because it has such a profound effect on nutrient partitioning, you see that thyroid conversion changes as well, even though you're in a caloric deficit. Now, I'm sure most of you guys already know that growth hormone promotes thyroid conversion, and when you go on exogenous growth hormone, you need to supplement with T4, because otherwise you deplete T4 concentrations when it converts into T3, and then T3 concentrations deplete, lowering your overall metabolism because it's the T3 that's active and the T4 is inactive. Growth hormone promotes the conversion of T4 into T3, and I suspect that Trenbolone does the same thing. Now, if you only use Trenbolone without exogenous growth hormone, you don't see a tremendous reduction in T4 concentrations, even though you're in a caloric deficit, which might downregulate your, thyroid production and thyroid-stimulating hormone levels as well. Especially with prolonged dieting, you see that thyroid concentrations reduce, in an attempt to preserve calories. Now, Trenbolone kind of prevents the downregulation. That's why it's usually preferred during a contest prep. But the problem is, because Trenbolone promotes thyroid conversion, But a nighttime growth hormone pulse, which is naturally secreted around 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock at night, promotes additional thyroid conversion. So now you have the increased body temperature from the Trenbolone being such a potent androgen and promoting nutrient partitioning. And your endogenous growth hormone secretion promotes thyroid conversion and metabolism on top. Now you're sleeping in bed. Half of your body is touching the bed and you can't radiate your heat through the bed away. So the heat stays and, you're probably underneath the blanket. So now this body heat and increased body temperature has no method to radiate away. And what happens? You start to sweat. Now, for all the guys that are running Trenbolone right now and are experiencing night sweats, I can almost guarantee you that when you set your alarm clock to it, or you look at the night clock when you do wake up to, take a piss, and you're drenched in sweat, it's probably after 2 a.m. It's probably after 2 a.m., maybe after 3 a.m. when your high natural growth hormone secretion occurs during deep REM sleep. Now, if you suffer from transomnia and you don't sleep according to your circadian rhythm, this night sweat might be induced at a later state because the growth hormone secretion is later because you're going to bed later. But if you sleep according to your circadian rhythm, you can almost set your clock to it. Night sweats start to occur after 2 a.m. But there's 2 ways to make the Tren sweats a little bit more tolerable. I mean, they won't go away unless you take the Trenbolone out, and then they might even stay for, weeks to months on end because of the Trenbolone metabolites are detectable for up to 5 months after the last administration and might induce a little bit of Tren sweats. So if you get off the Tren and you still have Tren sweats months down the line, maybe calcium deglucarate will be able to, take all these metabolites out a little bit faster than usual because the glucuronation process needs calcium deglucarase to function optimally. It's another way around it. When you get off the Tren, you still have night sweats, Tren sweats. But while you're on Tren and you want to continue with the Trenbolone and you want to deal with your Tren sweats, one way is to put a fan at the foot of your bed so it blows from feet to head, not from head to feet. I found that it works better that way because I feel that if it blows on my head directly, I won't be able to fall asleep. So that's just another method to get out or get around the transomnia. A fan at the foot of your bed blowing the heat over your head. If you do it the other way around, I feel that the head cools down a little bit too much and it makes it difficult to fall asleep. Again, your head is usually the only body part that's uncovered, sleeping under a blanket. So I feel that it cools down a little bit too much and, you feed into the transomnia that way. Another way around it, or to reduce the overall Tren sweats, is by sleeping under a body towel. So I have a body towel here in Thailand since the early days because even when I didn't take Tren and even when I sleep in the air conditioning, I still get a little bit of night sweats because it's hot. But if you sleep in a colder climate, now it's winter for most of the Western world, right? So let's say it's 10 degrees inside, you still got a little bit of a heater on. I would highly advise everybody to sleep under a body towel. And you can, either buy those online or maybe have a look at your local wholesale or retail larger bedding store where they sell these kinds of niche sleeping products. So you simply go there or have a look online and go with the largest full body towel you can find in a color of your preference. And then you use that instead of your regular blanket when you're on Trenbolone, whether that's, during the winter or during the summer. You will have to use it in both scenarios. Now, the good thing is with this full body towel, it's of course a little bit porous, allowing some air to go through. So you will cool down regardless. But if you use a fan at the footrest of your bed, it will blow some of the air straight through the blanket, allowing you to, or through the full body towel, allowing you to cool down right away. So in those cases, when you have a fan at the foot of your bed and you're using a full body towel instead of a blanket, Tren sweats should not really be that dramatic anymore to the point where you're literally sliding out of your bed. And what I had when I was in Trenbolone in the winter, and I didn't use a fan to cool down, I would sleep underneath a blanket and it would be completely soaked. The blanket would be soaked, the pillow would be soaked, and my mattress would be soaked. Now, in these cases, because you're in a caloric deficit, you go out to pee frequently during the night. And probably also because I was combining Trenbolone with Progesterone, which, makes you pee really frequently. So you go out of bed several times per night. It's pretty cold in your room because you're trying to keep your body temperature down, even though you're sleeping underneath a blanket. And back then I didn't know this strategy of sleeping under a full body towel and using a little fan at the foot of my bed. So I would go to pee, and by the time I came back, my bed would be cold AF. And then again, transomnia sets in, you're in your bed shivering, trying to warm this area up. And of course, 5 minutes later, it's completely warmed up and you fall back asleep again. But you go through this process like several times per night. Go out to pee, come back to bed, and you're freezing. So really, guys, use a full body towel to allow a little bit of airflow through. Put a little fan at the foot of your bed. And if you do sweat, this towel you can just simply wipe away. So you just wipe yourself dry. Wipe the sweat off your head. You can also put a towel around your pillow, which helps to absorb some of the sweat in case you still get the Tren sweats. Man, I think that was a pretty good solution, right? So with that out of the way, let's move on to some of the other side effects. And I think that was the last one we can label as a Tren meme. So Tren sweats. No, that's not true. I got another Tren meme coming. Don't worry. We'll continue this laughter with the Tren memes further in this video. So the next side effect is complete infertility and a severely reduced semen volume. Now, I have 2 videos about this, how to maintain fertility and testicular size on cycle. That video is right here. And then I have a protocol about monstrous ejaculations. And that's this video. Now, I'll tell you right away, both of those protocols are not going to work. Because Trenbolone is such a potent androgen that you will be infertile and have tremendously reduced semen volume, even if you're doing this monstrous ejaculation protocol and you're using ACG or HMG on cycle to maintain some sort of fertility or testicular size. In that battle, Trenbolone will win any day, any battle. Don't bet against the Trenbolone. Trenbolone will win, and your testicles and your semen volume will be completely gone. Well, you'll still have some semen volume, but your testicles will be, visibly reduced to raisin size, regardless of how much HMG or HCG you decide to take on a Trenbolone cycle. There's no way around the reduction of semen volume, so both of those protocols are not going to work, and the testicular size will be reduced and the semen volume will be reduced for several weeks to maybe even months after discontinuing Trenbolone, simply because its metabolites are such potent androgens as well. So keep that in mind. If your partner asks you, why don't you love me so much anymore? And why are your why are your nuts turned into raisins? You just, lay blame on the Trenbolone. And if your partner asks you to come off, you listen. Again, because love and appreciation comes in many different shapes and sizes. And I'll leave it at that. Next side effect. DHT derivative-related side effects, even though Trenbolone is not a DHT derivative, it's a progestogenic steroid with progestogenic activity that still gives you DHT-related side effects. So, of course, everybody knows that on Primobolan, Masterone, Winstrol, maybe even Advarb is a little bit less, but Masterone, Provarine, Primo, Winstrol, and of course, if you have a lot of DHT conversion from testosterone into dihydrotestosterone, you get the following side effects: acne, hair loss, prostate enlargement, changes in skin texture. Now, you see that on Primo and Masterone, especially when it has, it changes the estradiol collagen synthesis because it acts as an aromatase inhibitor. Now, with Trenbolone, I don't feel that it's a very potent aromatase inhibitor or has very potent aromatase inhibiting properties. So the skin texture changes you don't see as much. And it also occurs because it's a progestogenic steroid and it increases collagen synthesis through the progesterone receptor. So that last one that's commonly related to DHT is not really occurring, but the acne, the hair loss, and the potential for prostate enlargement is there because it's such a potent androgen. So keep that in mind. I already made a video about acne with Dr. Steven DeVos. You can find that right here. Hair loss, I'm not the right guy to ask. I am apparently immune to hair loss, and actually, I wish I had a little bit of hair loss so I didn't need to trim so freaking often. And prostate enlargement can also occur. Now, the rate of acne, hair loss, and prostate enlargement is probably not as pronounced as a Masterone or perhaps a Primobolan, Winstrol, or some of the other DHT derivatives, but the effects are very possible. So it's not a given that you will get these side effects, but it is a possibility. Now, again, I mentioned before that Trenbolone is often combined with Masterone, but if you exclude the Masterone, some of these side effects might still occur. So keep that in mind, and you need to take things in place to prevent some of these DHT-related side effects from occurring. Now, the main problem is because Trenbolone is not a DHT derivative and doesn't convert into DHT, taking something like dutasteride, finasteride, is not going to prevent any of the hair loss or prostate enlargement. So you would need to look into an anti-androgen like aldactone, or a topical anti-androgen like RU58841, or ketoconazole shampoo. And then there's also minoxidil shampoo, which are all known to prevent hair loss from DHT derivatives or, potent androgens. Again, I'm not really the right guy to ask, so please head over to Derek, More Plates, More Dates. I'm sure all you guys are familiar with that for the latest on hair loss prevention, whether that's from DHT derivatives or the Trenbolone sandwich. Now, prostate enlargement is not as common compared to the DHT derivatives, but it's still a possibility. So if you're doing methods to prevent hair loss, hopefully they will help to prevent prostate enlargement as well. And at the first sign of prostate enlargement, you should definitely get off the Trenbolone and discontinue all other forms of exogenous hormones because, again, the prostate responds to androgens, and benign prostate hyperplasia is something that comes with age. So you might not notice it when you're in your 30s or 40s, but it becomes more pronounced when you're in your 50s or 60s. So you might be able to accelerate the rate of benign prostate enlargement when you take Trenbolone at your younger years. And then by the time you get 40, you get prostate enlargement for real because you accelerated the rate of growth in your early years when you took Trenbolone. So please keep that all in mind. And then the last androgenic side effect that I'd like to discuss in this video, which is very related to Trenbolone, but not exclusive to Trenbolone. It's actually quite common amongst most of the potent anabolic androgenic steroids, is the voice changes, which is very prominent when you take Trenbolone, regardless of dose. But at the higher dosages, it's very noticeable. And those voice changes will never go back. So my voice didn't sound like this before I took Trenbolone. And now that I haven't taken Trenbolone 7-8 years, the voice is noticeably an octave or two lower. So I'd like to introduce the term Tren White, named after Barry White. And I'm sure most of the guys that grew up in the 80s or the 90s know that Barry White had a very deep and smoothing voice. And playing Barry White would get you laid every day of the week. So these voice changes are indeed very noticeable, not only to yourself, but to people around you as well, especially the bodybuilders, because they already know what's up when your voice changed an octave, 1, 2, or maybe even 3 lower. So keep that in mind. Trenbolone will deepen the voice tremendously, especially with prolonged exposure or short exposure at a higher dosages, because it's the overall androgenic effect at higher dosages or prolonged exposure that will deepen the voice tremendously. Because I've heard that too much of anything isn't good for you, baby. Moving on to sex drive. While we're on the subject of Barry White, let's move on to the sex drive, because I feel that Barry White and sex drive, or, getting lucky, pretty much go hand in hand. Now, Trenbolone, a lot of people notice that their sex drive is tremendously high, even though their semen volume is unimpressionably low. So, sex drive might be unsatiable. Some guys solve that by having multiple girlfriends, or, now with Tinder, the problem is usually solved, But if you don't have a partner that can keep up with your sex drive, blisters, not in the hand. So, it comes from the progestogenic activity again. But you'll see you have this tremendous amount of sex drive while you're taking Trenbolone, which is usually compounded when you're on a little bit of Masterone and testosterone, even though in some cases the estradiol concentration is tremendously reduced to facilitate fat loss from stubborn body fat areas. the sex drive will be there, simply due to its progestogenic activity. Now, you could also completely crash the sex drive when the estrogen is way too low and the progestogenic activity is way too high. But I don't see that too often with people. So we coined the term deca obelisk or Tren obelisk. But in most cases, it doesn't really occur if you keep your estradiol in a favorable range and your prolactin suppressed, reducing the refractory period tremendously. Again, most guys will take vitamin B6, P5P, or even cabergoline to, reduce their prolactin concentrations, which tremendously shortens the refractory period. So now you have this increased sex drive through progestogenic activity and a very short refractory period, allowing you to feed into the sex drive over and over and over again, tremendously reducing your semen volume even further. Now, what happens is when you get off the Trenbolone, because you had this progesterone-induced sex drive, the Trenbolone comes out, this progestogenic activity disappears over time, your HPTA and HPAA, hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, is completely shut down because Trenbolone is such a potent androgen. So DHEA, DHEA sulfate, Pregnenolone, and Pregnenolone sulfate are pretty low or almost non-existent, at the bottom of the reference range or even below it. I've only seen blood work of DHEA, DHEA sulfate, Pregnenolone, Pregnenolone sulfate on 2 scenarios where it was below the reference range. Super high dosages of Trenbolone and people of very advanced stages of life, let's say 90 to 95 years old. So you can induce yourself subclinical neurosteroid levels by simply going on Trenbolone. Now, you won't feel it because Trenbolone is such a potent, neurotoxic agent, regardless of how much estrogen you're on, and it has so much potent progestogenic activity, compensating for the lack of DHEA and Pregnenolone that's in your system, keeping sex drive at an all-time high. At one point, the Trenbolone comes out, DHEA and Pregnenolone are chronically low, and as a result, progesterone levels are also chronically low. So you're so used to this sex drive mediated through the progesterone receptor that this low amount of progesterone or Pregnenolone is not able to sustain this sex drive. But in reality, your sex drive might crash. Again, it also has to do with how your estradiol levels are. And now if you're doing a post-cycle therapy, if you're coming off Trenbolone and you do some sort of ACG or HMG therapy, which actually restores DHA sulfate, Pregnenolone, Pregnenolone sulfate, and progesterone levels, this crash of sex drive might not be as severe. So you won't get Tren obelisk, even though you're off the Tren. Tren obelisk. I mean, guys, too many memes, man. It's the most meme material compound out there. Primobolan, how many memes do we have for that? Even though it's, in my opinion, one of the best anabolic androgenic steroids you can choose from, besides testosterone, obviously. So, super high sex drive on Trenbolone, and perhaps super low sex drive without the Trenbolone, which might take several weeks to months to recover again. So, keep that in mind, guys. These are all the side effects that I know that are associated with Trenbolone. There's many more other effects of Trenbolone which affect your blood work. We'll discuss that in the next Trenbolone profile video. And I hope it helps, guys. I know it's a little bit of a disclaimer and a detergent to run Trenbolone, but everybody that I've met that have used Trenbolone in the past will say the same thing. It's not worth it, man. Even though the Tren white deep voicing effect is I don't feel it's too bad. It's not a lingering side effect that I can complain about. And I hope that helps, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.